05.
It has happened again. Another terrorist bomb attack against an American target in Beirut. And once again, it was a bomb-filled vehicle driven by a person bent on death, his own and others. And once again, he succeeded. Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Today's toll from the suicide bomber in Beirut is at least 23, and the number of dead possibly could be as many as 40. 2 American military men were among those killed. 60 people were wounded, 21 of them Americans. The target of the bomb-filled van that crashed through security guards was the U.S. Embassy Annex in predominantly Christian East Beirut. That building serves as a satellite to the new main embassy across the Green Line. Claiming responsibility for today's attack was the Islamic Jihad, the same group that said it bombed the old U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Marine headquarters in Beirut last year, killing a total of 258 Americans then. We have reports tonight from Larry Pentak in Beirut and David Martin at the Pentagon.
The blast tore through the building, shattering the side facing the explosion. Diplomats inside were thrown to the floor. The lucky ones were cut by glass, but there were others, both Americans and Lebanese, who did not escape. In his top floor office, American Ambassador Reginald Bartholomew is meeting with his British counterpart, David Myers, when the roof collapsed.
They both had suffered superficial wounds. Both were clearly stunned, but the British ambassador was standing and was very helpful, pointed out that the American ambassador had been pinned into some rubble. He was not visible at the time and helped us extricate the American ambassador from the rubble.
Despite their injuries, other diplomats helped supervise the rescue operation. This injured Marine helped keep order until he finally collapsed and had to be carried from the scene. Driving a van similar to those used by the embassy, the bomber had approached a checkpoint about 100 yards from the building, manned by local Lebanese militiamen employed as embassy guards. He drove around a series of concrete blocks designed to make vehicles slow down and past the guards, who opened fire when he failed to stop. But by then, he'd picked up speed down the access road and set off the explosion right next to the building. There was no heavy barricade that had to be raised or lowered, no steel gate to open or close. Metal tank barriers lined the road instead of blocking it. Trenches were dug along the road instead of across it. Marine Corporal Larry Gill was on duty at the front gate when he heard shooting. Seconds later, he was knocked out by the blast.
There were skid marks and 3 or 4 shots fired, and the lights went out.
The building housed the bulk of the American diplomats in Beirut. They'd been moved there after a series of kidnappings, assassinations, and threats against Americans in Muslim West Beirut. U.S. officials had decided the diplomats would be safer in the Christian half of town. Larry Pentak, CBS News, Beirut.
CBS News has learned that earlier this month, U.S. intelligence obtained hard evidence that a terrorist attack like this was being planned and that it was being done with the help of the Iranian government. According to informed sources, U.S. intelligence found out that Iran was shipping hundreds of pounds of explosives through Syria to Iranian terrorists in Lebanon. One source said the U.S. did not try to stop the shipment for fear of endangering the lives of these 3 Americans, including U.S. diplomat William Buckley, kidnapped by terrorists in Beirut earlier this year. A second source said the U.S. could not have acted in any event because the intelligence did not specify how or when the explosives were being shipped. Both sources agreed that the intelligence was picked up at about the same time terrorists were publicly threatening to attack Americans.
A news agency received a telephone message in Beirut on September 8. The caller claimed to be a representative of the Islamic Jihad organization, threatened that the organization would strike very shortly at a key American interest in the Middle East.
The American veto of a United Nations resolution demanding that Israel ease its occupation of Lebanon triggered the September 8th threat. The State Department sent out a special advisory to be on the alert for a terrorist attack. Sources say the Beirut embassy responded with a cable agreeing that the terrorist threat was very high. Nevertheless, the explosives-laden van got within 20 feet of the embassy annex. U.S. officials claim the security precautions at least prevented a death toll like those from earlier terrorist attacks in Beirut.
In this case, our measures at least did not have that car penetrate the building the way it did before.
But some members of Congress still said security was lax.
Looks as though it's a repeat of
what happened to our 261 Marines, and we should have been prepared.
Following last October's massacre at the Marine compound in Beirut, the Pentagon drew up a list of targets to be hit in retaliation for future terrorist attacks. But U.S. officials are not giving any hint of whether they intend to strike back this time. Defense Secretary Weinberger said only all appropriate measures are under consideration. Late today, Pentagon officials said the helicopter carrier Shreveport, which had just completed an unsuccessful search for mines in the Gulf of Suez, is now on its way to Beirut. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
One of the dead Americans was identified by the Pentagon as Army Chief Warrant Officer Kenneth Welch of Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was 33. I'll be back in a moment with more on today's Beirut bomb attack.
Imagine designing a telephone system for a city that doesn't exist yet. Someplace growing with more people talking, more data and video transmission. How can any phone company keep up? With ITT System 12, an extraordinary digital system that expands easily and economically as a small town becomes a big city. ITT System 12 is designed to meet needs that don't even exist yet.
It's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your breath. Yeah, Freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your breath. Yeah, Freedom's the one.
Freedent gum not only won't stick to your dental work, it helps clean in between to freshen your breath while you chew.
Freedom's the one that took the stick out of gum and puts the fresh in your breath. Freedom's the one.
Freshen your breath with non-stick Freedent.
President Reagan and George Bush, Walter Mondale, and Geraldine Ferraro all reacted to today's terror attack in Lebanon with sorrow and anger. Bill Plant reports the president and the others did their reacting on the road, out campaigning.
Just hours after the bombing, President Reagan was on the campaign trail, deploring the incident.
It's another painful reminder of the persistent threat of terrorism in the world. I'm proud, as all Americans should be proud, of the brave Americans who are serving our nation throughout the world. We can't just withdraw in the face of this kind of terrorism.
Challenger Walter Mondale, who's had plenty of criticism of Mr. Reagan's Lebanon policy in the past, was carefully supportive today.
We stand behind the president in taking appropriate acts to punish those that are responsible for these wholly inexcusable acts of violence.
Mr. Reagan, who talked about the bombing standing at the edge of an Iowa soybean field, would not discuss possible retaliation. But he did say that he was satisfied there had been enough security at the Beirut Embassy Annex.
The only defense you have against terrorist activities is if you can infiltrate and intercept and know in advance where they're going to strike.
Despite the tragedy, President Reagan made scheduled campaign appearances today in Iowa and Michigan after he had considered canceling.
That's the difference whether I'm there or here. You're president wherever you are, and I have as fast communication on these matters wherever I am.
Vice President Bush, who normally chairs the White House crisis management team, was also on the campaign trail. President Reagan made 5 campaign speeches today, and he took care to deplore the terrorism in Lebanon at each one of them. But his aides say that retaliation is no more likely in this case than it was following the bombing of the Marine barracks almost a year ago. What is crucial in their view is that Mr. Reagan maintain an image of leadership. Bill Plant, CBS News, with the Reagan campaign in Grand Rapids.
The images of death and destruction remain vivid. The wreckage in April 1983 at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. The rubble 6 months later at what had been U.S. Marine headquarters. Both destroyed by truck bombs, both by the Islamic Jihad. Tom Fenton in London takes a look at this group dedicated to death.
Southern Lebanon. If there's a recruiting ground for Arab terrorism, this is the place. Continued Israeli occupation of the homeland of nearly 1 million Shia Muslims has fueled Islamic fundamentalism here. Out of this cauldron of fanaticism has come the shadowy group called Islamic Jihad, meaning Islamic Holy War. None of its members has ever been identified. No one is sure it even exists, but an appalling list of suicide missions has been carried out in its name, with American interests the prime targets.
The United States is an obvious target for the Arabs. It identifies very obviously, with Israel and its ambitions. Secondly, it is the country now with a high profile in the Middle East, and therefore it is an easy target. It is the obvious target, rather.
It's not the only target. Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for mining the Red Sea this summer, and suicide attacks last year that included the French barracks in Beirut and Israeli headquarters in southern Lebanon. Some experts think it's not one, but a network of groups.
I think it's a label which represents many different freelance Shia groups, but each acting in this general thrust of opposing the Israeli occupation of their country.
Islamic Jihad's leaders are unknown, but its inspiration is well known. Ayatollah Khomeini. His regime in Iran trains Muslim terrorists. It may not direct their actions, but openly encourages them. This may not be Islamic Jihad's last act. 90 minutes after the bombing, an anonymous caller repeated the threat that it will not stop until the last American leaves Lebanon. Tom Fenton, CBS News, London.
We now have confirmed identification of the second U.S. military man known to have been killed in today's Beirut bombing, Petty Officer First Class M. Ray Wagner of Sebelon, North Carolina. He was 30. There was other violence today in Lebanon. Druze militiamen firing machine guns and throwing hand grenades staged a revenge attack on a Shiite Muslim village near the Israeli border. 13 villagers were killed, 22 wounded. That attack was in reprisal for a guerrilla ambush last night that killed 4 Druze.
Okay, now you all wear dentures. Tell me what your problems are.
Slipping.
Seeds under my plate.
Denture adhesives. Creams can ooze.
And they can taste terrible. Okay, that's why Johnson & Johnson created Secure Denture Adhesive. Secure is a paper-thin adhesive seal. Moisten your dentures and it covers them like a security blanket. Then dissolves to form a custom-fitted bond between your dentures and your gums.
Well, no problems with slipping.
Or seeds.
No problem. The stuff's terrific.
Get Secure and help make denture problems no problem.
Fresh and clean as a whistle. That's Irish Spring. Fresh and clean as a whistle.
Irish Spring's green and white stripes have 2 truly effective deodorants. 2 deodorants.
And a fine fresh scent. So you're fresh and
clean as a whistle.
That's Irish Spring deodorant soap. Gets you fresh and clean as a whistle.
The findings officially released today in a 5-month investigation by a special prosecutor who looked into the affairs of Edwin Meese, President Reagan's close friend, White House counselor, and nominee to be the new United States Attorney General. The conclusion, Meese committed no prosecutable offense. But the special prosecutor noted his report did not address, quote, Meese's ethics, the propriety of his conduct, or an evaluation of his fitness for office, unquote. Rita Braver has more about this.
The independent counsel's report cleared Meese of any criminal wrongdoing, and a happy Edwin Meese talked about the end of a long ordeal.
It's been obviously a difficult experience, but we think it's been worthwhile and certainly necessary, because now that that investigation is completed, it has cleared the air and has clearly established that there was no basis to any of these allegations or rumors.
Independent counsel Jacob Stein and his staff examined 11 separate areas of Meese's conduct. The one that experts said was potentially the most dangerous for Meese, the failure to disclose a $15,000 loan from Edwin Thomas, a family friend who later worked for Meese in the White House. But the report found no evidence linking the job to the loan, and it accepted Meese's explanation that he simply forgot to report the loan in required financial statements. In a written comment, President Reagan said it was a happy moment and repeated his intention, if re-elected, to send Meese's nomination for Attorney General to a new session of Congress.
He feels this is a man he needs to help him, and unless there's some reason not to confirm him, I think he ought to be confirmed.
However, Senator Howard Metzenbaum, Meese's toughest critic on the Judiciary Committee, said the report raises new questions about Meese's fitness to become Attorney General. In a separate written statement, Meese acknowledged he's now learned a lot about official life in Washington and the need for constant vigilance not only to actual conduct, but also to how conduct may be perceived. Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
Congressional leaders and President Reagan reached agreement today on a new defense budget, a key feature of the compromise, a major victory for MX missile opponents. They are now assured of another crack at killing MX missile money in a vote after next April. Total price tag for this compromise, fiscal 85 Pentagon budget, $292 billion, and after-inflation increase of 5% over this year. Other features of today's so-called agreement in principle: a compromise over testing of anti-satellite weapons, a compromise over the president's authority to wage war in Central America. The Commerce Department's so-called flash estimate today showed the gross national product slowing to an annual growth rate of 3.6% in the third quarter. That's well below the measure of the total output of goods and services in the first 2 quarters of this year. But the slowdown was not as sharp as some analysts feared, and they say the current level can support the expansion of the past 22 months. The reactions after the first trial involving 2 alleged child sex rings in the small farming town of Jordan, Minnesota. Robert and Lois Bentz, who last night were acquitted of abusing their 6-year-old son and 4 other children, vowed to regain custody of their 3 sons taken from them 9 months ago. But the prosecutor said the verdict demonstrated the jury's refusal to believe child witnesses. She said she will fight the Bentz's efforts to regain custody and will press prosecution of 23 other Scott County residents accused of involvement in the sex rings.
This is the pain-relieving medicine for which doctors have written 100 million prescriptions. And now you can get it in a new non-prescription strength. Bristol Myers introduces Nuprin. 1 tablet has the strength to relieve most minor aches and pains. Nuprin contains ibuprofen. It's a medicine totally different than aspirin or the ingredient in Tylenol. If you've had a serious problem taking aspirin, before taking Nuprin, ask your doctor. The medicine in new Nuprin, it's over 100 million prescriptions strong.
Among the cars of the future at this year's auto shows are these advanced designs from Audi's German engineers. Refined in wind tunnels, they slice through air with ease and agility, and with almost no wind noise. But unlike other car makers' prototypes, you don't have to wait years to drive them. You can experience the luxurious new Audi 5000s, the most aerodynamic wagon and sedan in America today. Audi, the art of engineering.
It isn't all over but the shouting. One local Reagan campaign official in California now admits to some contact with people who turned out to heckle and shout down Walter Mondale. But President Reagan insists his campaign staffers have nothing to do with it. Correspondent Bob Schieffer reports that Walter Mondale got heckled again today amid signs of heckle escalation all around on the campaign trail.
Republican protesters have been showing up with increasing frequency at Mondale rallies, as they did today in Seattle and yesterday in Stockton, California. The most strident exchanges came Monday in Los Angeles on the University of Southern California campus.
We want to be heard, we will be heard, and we will win this election because we will be heard.
Arriving last night in Seattle, Mondale said he didn't know who was behind it all, but the president ought to stop it.
I have not done this to Mr. Reagan, and if I thought anybody was doing this to him on my behalf, I'd stop it.
The Los Angeles Times quoted a USC student as saying the Reagan campaign encouraged the heckling, but that was later denied by a student organizer.
We weren't told to do anything. It was all spontaneous.
In Sacramento, however, a Reagan campaign official conceded they had organized the pro-Reagan demonstration.
I think it's entirely appropriate to have our supporters there to let people know that we are supporting Ronald Reagan.
By mid-morning, the controversy had reached Air Force One.
Your people aren't organizing that, are they?
Sam, good Lord, no. I wish that people wouldn't do it.
Even so, there seemed no end to it. As the president and Mondale were talking about hecklers, both their running mates were getting heckled. Geraldine Ferraro got hers in Arlington, Texas. Vice President Bush found his in Brattleboro, Vermont.
Heckling, there's a kind of tradition for that, and I don't think anybody should be all uptight about it.
Ironically, some people traveling with him think the hecklers are the best thing that ever happened to Walter Mondale. His speaking style can sometimes be as colorless as this gray Seattle day, but the hecklers seem to energize him and give his speeches a spark that his audiences really liked. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Seattle.
A doctor treating Muhammad Ali today said the 42-year-old former boxing champion is not punch drunk. Ali checked into a New York hospital for tests earlier this week. The doctor said Ali may be suffering from Parkinsonism, which he said mimics Parkinson's disease, a degenerative brain disorder. The doctor said Ali has a great attitude about life, about his mission on Earth, and can lead a normal life with medication. Ali plans to leave the hospital tomorrow for an Islamic conference in the Sudan, returning for more tests next week.
You get turned down by the best and the brightest today.
I'm stepping out and making strides. Ain't nothing gonna slow me down. I've got my Dr. Scholl's in.
Dr. Scholl's announces new improved air pillow insoles. Now there's a soft white layer and a blue one to cushion shock in one thin insole for double comfort down to your toes.
I'm stepping out and making strides. Ain't never gonna touch the ground. I've got my Dr. Scholl's in.
Dr. Scholl's air pillow, the double comfort insole.
There you go. Son, we're really proud of you getting into college. Thanks.
And the orthodontist said my braces would be off in just 6 months.
Even good news can weigh heavily on a family's finances. But thanks to John Hancock, you can balance your needs for the future with sound financial planning, mutual funds, retirement help, and more.
Well, everyone, here's to our future.
Put the weight of John Hancock on your side. John Hancock. We can help you here and now, not just hereafter.
If Bill lives in Bighorn, Wyoming,
howdy,
and Stan lives in Rockland, Maine,
hey there,
and Jane lives in Calhoun, Georgia,
Charmed, I'm sure.
how much will it cost Fred to call all of them? Just $10 an hour.
sounds good.
AT&T's new Reach Out America plan lets you call anywhere in the U.S. for $10 an hour per month. Additional hours are even less. Now you know just how far your money goes. That must be Fred. AT&T, the more you hear, the better we sound.
At the time, the Reagan administration Environmental Protection Agency cited it as a case of cutting needless red tape. Critics called it a case of the EPA cutting the rug out from public prosecution, from public protection, from dangerous pesticides, and cutting a sweetheart deal with industry. It was the EPA's so-called streamlining of the review process on cancer-causing ingredients and pesticides. Under then Administrator Ann Gorsuch-Burford, EPA and chemical company officials met in private more than 250 times and set safety standards on 99 chemicals. Today, critics of the program won an out-of-court settlement. That EPA review process is being scrapped. EPA reviews of pesticide ingredients will be conducted in the open, conducted independent of industry, and at least 13 pesticide chemicals will be reviewed again. Edwin Mises finances EPA meetings behind closed doors to set regulations with the pesticide makers being regulated. Heckling politicians. Just tonight, several of our reports, in one way or another, touched on issues of ethics in government. Bob Simon has been looking into the ethics of having the nation's candidates run, not just under a spotlight, but a microscope, and how this is changing the nation's politicians, even affecting who decides not to run at all.
If you're running for office, as Ferraro and Zuccaro learned, the 10 Commandments are only a starting point. This was the first time a running mate's mate had been subjected to such scrutiny.
Aren't you people getting tired?
And how does Vice President Bush feel about the new scrutiny?
I feel that's an invasion of my privacy, but that, I guess, just goes with the territory.
Mr. President. Politicians have become celebrities, and celebrities have no private life. The audience wants it all.
Henry, hello.
Hello, Alexis. Good to see you.
Special prosecutors have become the gossip columnists of our time, letting us know there was no evidence that Ham Jordan had sniffed cocaine or that Ed Meese had sold White House favors. The hottest issue in Iowa this season is not farm prices, but what Senator Jepsen did or didn't do when he visited a house of ill repute once, 7 years ago, before he became a senator. Compelling questions, perhaps. So compelling that many talented people are saying, I don't need this. Count me out.
You get turned down by the best and the brightest today.
Congressman Tony Coelho should know he's the Democratic Party's talent scout.
People today are so concerned about what you're put through that they're just concerned that there is something that they may have done that they don't know anything about.
When Republicans in Seattle asked John Jameson to run for mayor, he said no, twice, while insisting he had nothing to hide.
I did not want to be pursued by the press. I did not want to be picked at and annoyed by the petty inquiries.
Never mind discouraging people from getting in and running, discouraging the voter where he says, that they're all the same. They're all crooks. They're all inept. They're all sex maniacs. They're all ripping off the government. So why bother to vote? And the result of that is you get all these kooks being elected around here on one issue basis, and then you can't run the government of the United States.
Otis Pike got tired of trying. After 18 years in Congress, he retired, partly out of disgust over scrutiny. Pike says if the trend continues, we'll be left with blue bloods and Boy Scouts.
We tend to breed a whole class of wimps who are qualified for political office.
It wasn't always like this. Newspaper readers never knew about Abe Lincoln's debilitating fits of depression, or even about the chronic problems George Washington had with his expense accounts. And more recently, reporters did not mention FDR's mistress. They didn't focus on how many millions LBJ made on a politician's salary, or on how many women were whisked in and out of the Kennedy White House.
I think some of our great presidents would have had a very hard time with these very harsh tests that are applied today.
Watergate was the watershed. Journalists had helped dethrone a president. Even the Watergate Committee's chairman, Sam Ervin, thought that was a pretty dangerous precedent.
Of course, one of the bad things came out of Watergate. There were too many young reporters thought it'd be a fine thing to be investigative reporters.
It was a part of the Watergate syndrome where everybody was trying to be purer than everybody else, and I think terminal purity set in.
But if People magazine is replacing Congressional Quarterly as the journal of record, if the pendulum has swung too far, it's not about to swing back anytime soon. And that's troubling a lot of people, including the old country lawyer.
If the best people don't go into politics, it means that they condemn themselves and everybody else to be ruled by unwise people.
Bob Simon, CBS News, Morganton, North Carolina.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Thursday. Dan Rather reporting. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
In the field of personal business computers, the climb to the top is tough. Two companies have taken an early lead, but now there's a third, NEC. And now, NEC introduces the Advanced Personal Computer 3 to America. NEC, the world's third largest maker of personal computers, and climbing.
You exercise, you watch what you eat. To help your body work regularly, you look for extra sources of fiber, but you find calories. Introducing new sugar-free Metamucil with NutraSweet, a 1-calorie way to get fiber you need every day. Sugar-free Metamucil is tasty, natural grain fiber from Metamucil, the brand doctors recommend most to maintain regularity. Look for new sugar-free Metamucil, a 1-calorie way to get fiber you need every day.
Right now, when you buy certain T-Datic insulation, you'll get more than high-quality, energy-saving fiberglass. You'll also get a $1 rebate. In fact, you'll get $1 back for each of the first 40 rolls of certain T R19 you buy. Of course, an offer this good can't last forever, so look for the Certainteed Buck-a-Bundle rebate display at participating dealers now. You'll save money, saving energy.
I'm Bill Curtis. Tomorrow, author Joseph Heller. And in our 8:30 half hour, Lily Tomlin and Steve Martin. Wake up to what's happening on the CBS Morning News.
This is CBS.
Coming up next on Eyewitness News at 6, a Smyrna couple is arrested as part of an FBI investigation of counterfeit parts for video games. And an argument at the state prison leads to an inmate being shot. We'll have details coming up next.
In my pursuit of life's little pleasures, I finally found a coffee that is nothing like your basic brew. Nescafe Silka. Smooth and subtle and far more refined than I'll ever be. And if you don't like it, that's fine, because Nescafe's got 4 new coffees. One of them's going to taste your way. Smooth Silka,